Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be showing you a project that I worked on. This is for molded clay ornaments. So I saw this online and I thought these looked really cool and I wanted to try it out for myself. I will be honest with you, I thought this was going to be a whole lot easier than it actually turned out to be for me. Now, the end result, I was pretty happy with them, and I am definitely planning to do this again. But I spent about an hour on this project, and about half of that time was me figuring out the best way to do it. So, I am showing you my process, and I will give you the tips that I came up with that make it a little bit easier so that if you decide to do this, hopefully you won't spend half an hour just trying to figure out how to do it. So to get started with, I am using just a very low cost air dry clay. It was Crayola brand, so it's really for kids. Um, but I just decided to do that because there were definitely some nicer clay options out there that I could have used, but this is my first time doing it, so I figured the least amount of cost involved, the better. And, going forward, like I said, I might do this again next year. I might go ahead and invest in a better clay product then, but this being cheaper, it gave me the ability to fail essentially. And I think that's a good route to go anytime you're trying something for the first time. Just go with the lower cost option, and once you've kind of got it figured out, then you can kind of go ahead and expand and get into things that maybe are a little bit better quality. So the molds that I'm using for these are wooden cookie molds. You can do a search online and find tons of these. They have them on Etsy, fancyflowers.com, and they are originally for things like gingerbread and like really old world German cookies with names that I cannot pronounce. They have such a wide selection and they're so ornate and so beautiful. So that's definitely what I wanted to use for these. But my first learning curve thing, which I thought it was two or three different things, it really all boiled down to the same thing. I was not using thick enough pieces of clay to begin with. So when you're doing this with a mold that has lots of deep, defined pieces to it, you really need to have a thick enough piece of clay that you can peel it off of the mold without destroying the image. And that was something I didn't figure out until probably about halfway through the process. And I actually nearly gave up, but then I pulled one out and the edges of it didn't really work for me, but the inside part of the image was still intact and it was beautiful, and that's what made me decide, okay, I'm gonna stick with this here. And so as long as you're using a thick enough piece of clay, you should be able to get that out. You may want to be mindful when you are purchasing molds for this that you don't want to have anything that has like real thin little spots on the outer corners, or if it does, you might have to sacrifice those, because I did, like, there was a stem on the rose mold that just I could not get it to work because it was just too thin and it was pulling off with everything else. So I just opted to take a toothpick, just real fine, and just kind of go in there and take off any pieces that really weren't working for me, and just kind of finesse it until it looked like a good image. So, something else that I utilized here were some regular cookie cutters. This basically was able to give me a nice finessed edge on the outside. So, as long as you're using a large enough piece of clay, you can go in there and just use a regular cookie cutter to cut those kind of ragged edges off. And I definitely would recommend this if you want a nicer finished product. I left one of the rose pieces with I just kind of hand molded it into a round instead of using the cookie cutter. And by the time I was done with it, it just felt kind of clunky, like a kids art project, not really like polished and refined. And when I used the cookie cutter, it gave me those nice crisp edges. So you can definitely utilize that as well. And another thing that you'll want to have on hand for this project is a place for these to dry. I just used a baking sheet that I covered in a layer of wax paper. Because this is air dry clay, the package directions said it would take 2 to 3 days for these to dry completely. I found it took about 2 days in my house, and so I just left them on the tray, and then once one day had passed, I just flipped them over so that the backs could dry evenly and then moved on from there. And just one more thing that you'll want to be mindful of when you are making these ornaments is if you are planning to hang them or use them for gift tags or anything like that, you'll want to make sure that you go ahead and put a hole in there. So just a little toothpick in there worked well for me to give me just enough room to get a ribbon through there. So, after I had made several of the actual molded ornaments, I decided to go in with my rolling pin and roll some of the clay out. This just made it nice and smooth, a nice flat surface. And then I went in with my regular cookie cutters and just cut out some shapes. And I will be honest, I actually really enjoyed this. I probably had more fun with this than the molds, because even though the molds are more ornate and a beautiful finished product, this basically gave me an empty canvas. I knew I wanted to paint these ornaments with some acrylic paint after they were dry, and this enabled me to make like a household ornament, basically like those personalized ornaments that you can get at the store, but this was my own version of that. And you could really put anything you want on this. You could just paint it really beautiful. If painting is a skill of yours, it definitely is not of mine. But this was really fun. I really enjoyed just actually making shapes out of it that I could make into whatever I wanted. And here are my finished ornaments when I set them to dry. And like I said, I let these dry for 2 days, flipped them over halfway through. And then here are my ornaments after I had painted them. And I just used an acrylic paint for these. And after I got them where I wanted them, then I just sealed them with an acrylic sealing paint. And these are the ornaments once I actually got them on the tree. I did leave some of them plain. I kind of liked the way it looked. And if you use different colors of clay, that would look really cool as well. Just leaving them plain, but still letting them be shaped like that. So I really enjoyed this project, and I hope that you guys like it. I will probably do this again next year and just take my knowledge forward and do some different things with it. But I had fun with this, and I hope you guys did too. Thanks so much, and have a great day.